Ooh, been a hot minute since I recorded one of these. This is going to be another video where the audio and the video are not going to have a ton of heavy edits. It's just going to be me talking to you like this. We're going to go from there. So, last couple months have been a lot. March in general just sucked. Because, aside from gestures broadly at everything, I also had to deal with Bri passing away. For folks who are familiar with my live streams, you may know who Bri is. She was my sweet little gray baby. She passed away 2 months shy of 19 years old, which is quite old for a cat. But, it was one of those things where she was doing just fine until she wasn't. And then it went downhill very fast. It's, as of this recording, it has been 3 weeks, if not about a month, since I had to take her to the vet one last time. And at this point, I want to say I'm okay with thinking about her and not crying. I feel like if anything, within the last week, I actually finished a new little art zine called Witchy Kitties 3, an ode to Bri. And with that zine, what I wanted to do with that was just take some of my favorite pictures of Bri and put her in little witch hats and make them into little drawings and put them into a little zine. And honestly, just going through and finding my favorite pictures and looking back on the positive sides helped with the processing of everything. So she will be missed, but I'm so glad that I got to put together this zine. I wanted to get it done in time for Wrathacon too, because Wrathacon is not this weekend, but April 19th, 2025. That's something else that's been going on, is just convention season, going into the throes of convention season. I was at Pittsburgh Indie Expo last month, and the weekend after that, was it the weekend after that? But the next show after that I did was Detroit Zine Fest. Gotta say, had a great time at both places. It really reinvigorated me and really got me jazzed to go back into the indie scene, because that was something I wanted to do more of this year, 2025. Apologies if the thumping of my neighbors made it onto the microphone. I have new neighbors, and they have small children, and they really like to scream, slam stuff into the walls, scream at each other, and the parent screams at them. It's a whole thing. I'm not going to be in this apartment for too much longer. I'm going to be actually moving out at the end of May. That's a whole other thing that's been going on. Anyway, back to convention season. Pittsburgh Indie Expo, or PI for short, was actually picked up from Pittsburgh Indie Expo PIX. The organizers for PIX passed the torch on to the new organizers for PI, but it's kind of the same show, but also kind of not. Honestly, though, still had a great time there. The focus was on independent comics and books, and that was fantastic. Also hosted a panel for the first time when I was there. For folks who watch my shorts, you might know which panel it was. It was all about webcomics. Had a great time at that one, too. I was also told by folks afterwards that I did a great job hosting, and I was like, thank you. I was so nervous. I did my best. I asked for advice from other people who had also hosted panels for pro tips, so that helped. Shout out to the folks on the Heatsink Comics Collective Discord and on the Cartoonist Co-op Discord for all of their pro tips. Y'all helped a lot. After Pi was, I almost called it Pix, but after Pi was Detroit Zine Fest. That was the show. that made me go, you know what? Maybe for my table moving forward at like making appearances at other indie expos or zine fests or what have you, which for the record, for 2025, I'm not doing Comic Cons. The only pop culture con that I am doing is Wrathacon. That's the only pop culture con that I'm doing. Every other show that I'm doing this year is going to be an indie expo or a zine expo or like a book fair. Those are the only things that I'm going to be doing this year. So far, great results. I will say, after the last two shows, after my experience at Detroit Zine Fest also, and also after having looked at a blog post by Kel McDonald, where Kel McDonald talks about her table setup. Pretty sure she uses she, her pronouns, but she talks about her table setup at Emerald City Comic Con, where Kel McDonald's table is like 90% books, and then there's like a tote bag, and then that's kind of it. And I was like, that's actually kind of radical, because like for the last year and a half, if not 2 years, my table has been a mix of my books, stickers. I did have keychains up until like mid 2024, but I'm sold out of them and I have no intention of restocking them, especially considering this tariff nonsense. I'm not ordering any kind of like keychains or anything acrylic for the foreseeable future until that nonsense calms down. But on my table, I also had mini prints, and original art. And by original art, I classified that as like pages that I took out of my sketchbook and mounted onto backing paper and bagged it up so that it would be like displayed nicely. So my table has been a mix of that kind of stuff. Honestly, I really want to just not do the sticker game anymore. Like stickers, I can like take them or leave them. I kind of want to just phase them out. I really want to focus more on books and zines. Obviously, I want to focus on books because they are my number one selling category. Like, last year, just to give you an idea of, like, how much of a number one category that it is, last year I did over $2,000 in sales of my books. And then my number two category, I think, was original art, and it was, like, 500. If not like 700. So like the number one is like number one by like a mile and a half. So I really want to focus more on books and keep that there because they do well. The original art, like the sketchbook art, I may still keep at the table, but if I'm going to be doing art fests, they might do better there, I think. That said, the last two shows, Pittsburgh Indie Expo and Detroit Zine Fest, zines have been overtaking stickers. And stickers were like my number 3 category of sales. Zines have been overtaking them, and I'm not mad about it. Like I mentioned before, I kind of want to phase stickers out and just do more zines. I'm also just inspired by the variety of zines that I saw at Detroit Zine Fest. I mean, there were some at Pittsburgh Indie Expo, but there was a greater variety of them at Detroit Zine Fest because that was the focus of the Detroit show. So there were so many different zines. Like there was a zine dedicated to cat butts. There was a zine dedicated to destroying your lawn and making it a, like a, not natural, that's not the word I'm looking for. Like native plants. That's the word. Like bringing back native plants. There was an entire zine about little kaiju action figures in hand knit sweaters. That is my favorite zine that I got at Detroit Zine Fest. It brings me so much joy. Oh my God. And not just because I knit in my downtime. That's the other thing that I've been doing for the last few months is I'm trying to set clearer boundaries between like work and not work. And honestly, that kaiju knitting zine, I felt seen when there was a little segment in there that was like, oh my gosh, there was a segment that a kaiju talked about taking up knitting as a hobby, and they were like, you know, when you do what you love as work, at the end of the day, you just feel like, what else is there? And then a friend of mine suggested I take up knitting, and so I tried knitting, and it's been bringing the jazz back into my life. And I'm like, oh yeah, I feel seen. So yeah, sometimes whenever I have downtime, I will knit. The other thing I do in my downtime is I just read books. I've been catching up on a lot of books so far, because I'm recording this in April. Since I started tallying the number of books I've been reading since January, I think I'm at about 27 that I finished. I've had to DNF a few. That means do not finish. But I have finished 27 books. That's not counting zines. I have not been tallying the amount of zines that I've been reading, but I've been reading a lot more zines lately. And not just because of Detroit Zine Fest. I also just have an inordinate amount of zines that I need to start packing for the move. But there's a little part of me that's like, but I want to read them before I pack them in a box. So, you know, one thing at a time. Yeah, but because I've been reading more zines, I've been making more zines, and I'm really jazzed about doing zines. If you have no idea what I'm talking about when I mean zines, they're little personal magazines. The actual Wikipedia definition of them is that they are something that you can very easily photocopy, because that was their origin, was that they were handmade, like, independent magazines that you could put through a photocopy machine and distribute person to person. Zines are like the most punk thing that you could make, because all you really need is a photocopier and your imagination, and that is it. Some people like to make zines with cut up magazines and make collages out of them. There were a couple of folks at Detroit Zine Fest that they did collage zines, and those things were gorgeous. There were also a number of folks at Detroit Zine Fest, including my table neighbor who shared the table with me, who did what's called risograph. That's a whole other process. I don't entirely know how it works. Look it up if you want to know what risograph is, preferably on like YouTube or through DuckDuckGo. I don't necessarily trust Google search results anymore, and neither should you. Anyway, that actually reminds me, sorry, I have to build the bridge. So talking about not trusting Google made me think of like data, made me think of breaking away from big conglomerates like social media, which reminds me, I made a zine about how to promote your work without using social media. It is available on my Ko-fi shop now. I'm going to leave a link down in the description for you to get it. It's available for free, though tips are appreciated and will help fund the next resource zine that I put together. I'm actually putting together another resource zine right now. I'm hoping to get it done in time for Rathacon. All about how to draw cats, because cats are a weird soup of a critter, and they can be a little tricksy to draw sometimes. So I wanted to put together a little zine on how to draw cats. If I have enough time to, I'll put together a zine about how to draw mussels, because that's the next common thing that people ask me about, especially close friends. They will ask me how to draw mussels, and I'm like, I should really put together a zine about that. If I have enough time to, before Rathacon, I'll put that zine together, but I'm not making any promises on that front, because I still have comics and stuff that I gotta draw before the show next week. That said, I'm actually okay on my backlog for The Legend of Jamie Roberts and Vanita and the Demon King. What I need to start doing is making pages for An Ignorance of Romance, which is the newest comic that Kai and I are putting together. Kai, who went by Kia, was the writer of Seeing Him, for folks who remember that webcomic. Kai and I are teaming back up to work on An Ignorance of Romance. Kai's going to be the writer. I'm going to be the artist. We are running a crowdfunder right now to cover web hosting costs, domain registration costs, and the production of the first few pages of this webcomic. The story is about as Kai put it, an unfortunately heterosexual young man named Leon, who is not strong. He's just a very lanky, quiet beanpole of a boy who is sent on a quest for true love, trademark. And on his journey, he comes across a muscle dame, basically, named Amber. And Amber is searching for her lost husband. Shenanigans ensue. I'm really excited about drawing this comic. Again, it's on Crowdfunder. What we're offering for folks who support the project on Crowdfunder are sketchbooks, like e-sketchbooks collecting the concept art, as well as the early production stages of the comic pages. Also, early access to the webcomic pages before the rest of the internet gets them. We're also offering for folks to get drawn into the comic, because there will be crowd scenes, particularly in the first chapter of the story, because the first chapter of the story takes place at the Duke's Manor, and there's going to be manor staff, there's going to be stable people, there's going to be villagers. We really need people to fill in the crowd scene. So if you would like to get drawn into a crowd scene, that is a reward available on the Crowdfunder campaign. I'm going to leave a link to that down in the description as well. So, and also commissions. I'm offering commissions again. I was taking a break from commissions. I was retooling them and repricing them. I've now settled on a price that I think would work for folks. So offering that for folks who, are interested in that. And, I mean, if you're broke, which I get it, gestures broadly at everything. Shit be messy, excuse my language. So if you are broke, just share the link. Sharing is caring, and it helps a lot. You can also just read my other webcomics that I've got available for free. And also, a lot of the stuff that I have on my Ko-fi shop are free downloads. Make of that what you will. I wanted to make stuff, particular comics and resources, like digital resources, available for free. I don't want to put those behind a paywall. Tips are appreciated for folks who have the means to do so, but I don't want to put resources and stuff like that behind a paywall. I was there. I was a broke college student. I know how that goes. So I'm not subjecting other people to that. Anyway, yeah, just getting ready for Rathacon, putting together some new zines. I want to shift my table offerings so that I just focus more on books and zines. So what I'm thinking about doing for Rathacon in particular is just putting my stickers on like clearance prices. Putting my mini prints on clearance prices. I'm in talks with a local store right now about possibly putting my remaining 11 by 17 inch prints on their shelves so that I don't have to take them to shows. Because they should have the space for it. I mean, if they don't, then I'll make do. But I figured I'd reach out to this shop first before I start reaching out to other ones. And just sell the prints on consignment rather than trying to take them to conventions with me. Because at conventions, weirdly enough, my prints don't really move. My books do, clearly. They're my number one selling category, but my prints don't. So, peek behind the curtain there. And I'm like, you know what? I'm not going to put my energy on prints and mini prints and stickers when I'm not feeling that jazzed about it. I would rather put my energy onto the things that I'm jazzed about, which right now are zines and books and comics. That's where I want to put my energy. So that's where I'm going to put it. And I'm going to phase out the rest, at least for the time being. At least for, like, going to Zine Fest and stuff. I am going to, again, like I mentioned, I'm going to talk about putting my larger prints on consignment at a local store here. I'm also going to see about putting some original art for sale elsewhere. I actually have a piece that will be on display in the Toledo Lucas County Public Library, the main branch. I will have a piece or two on display in their gallery next to the same cafe, starting April 14th through the end of April into the rest of May. I'm going to have some art on display. So if you're in the Toledo area, keep an eye out for that. I think I'm going to stop there because I've been recording for a good 20-ish minutes. And honestly, I feel like that's long enough to let y'all know how I'm doing and what's on my mind and everything else. So if you're in the Athens, Ohio area the weekend of April 19th, I hope to see you there. Otherwise, keep an eye out. I will likely be popping up at other events in Toledo for the next couple of months. I actually heard back from the Toledo Comic Arts Fest. I'm going to have a spot there, and that's in July. So keep an eye out for that. And that's all I've got for you for now. One more thing. Sorry, I lied. Updates for The Legend of Jamie Roberts and Vanita and the Demon King will resume this coming week. It was on a customary 2-week hiatus. Customary, I say, because every time that I end a chapter of The Legend of Jamie Roberts, I take a 2-week break before I start updating pages again. It's really nice to have that hiatus buffer between chapters. 1, it builds up hype. 2, it gives me a second to build the backlog back up again. But it's also just really nice to just have that break between chapters. So if you are an aspiring webcomic artist, that would be my advice to you, is to intentionally structure in breaks with your comic. So yeah, updates for both of my webcomics are going to resume next week. Keep an eye on the An Ignorance of Romance crowdfunder. I will be posting more updates as the campaign goes on. That campaign ends on April 27th, by the way. So that's all I've got for now. For real this time. Thank you all so much for watching and listening. You are awesome.